welcome to this week's episode of the Psyched podcast. I am your host, Kaya Roman, and today I am so psyched to have Sherry Rais with us. This woman is doing such incredible work in our industry, groundbreaking work, possibly some of the most important work, honestly, as we're like developing clinical trials and we're trying to change laws and people are working on all kinds of aspects of psychedelic medicine development. We also need a way to like get it to the people and make it so that they can afford it. And that really, in the United States, the only way that happens is through insurance companies. So we are going to hear about what Sherry is working on. Let me tell you a little bit about this incredible woman and her amazing vision. So Sherry Rais is the CEO and co-founder of Enthea. She has helped dozens of startups, nonprofit organizations, academic research institutions, and small businesses raise funds and operate according to their mission and values and implement processes that enhance their overall efficiency. She's been at this for a long time. Before this, Sherry consulted for over 10 years with the United Nations and World Bank, implementing cash transfer programs at the national level in over 35 countries. In addition to being Enthea's CEO, she is the executive director of the Boston Psychedelic Research Group and the grants manager for CIIS. And so what is Enthea, just so you guys know, if you haven't heard about Enthea yet? They are providing insurance coverage for psychedelic therapy as a workplace benefit. And, this is really, as I said, the next level and the way that we need to move this medicine forward. So first of all, welcome, Sherry. Thank you so much for being here. And I would love to know, how did you get started in all of this? You have an incredible background consulting and helping, little tiny organizations like the United Nations, but
small.
like, how did you decide, oh yes, insurance coverage for psychedelics?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for asking, and thank you for having me here. It is a pleasure to meet you, an honor to be here. I want to start off by saying I'm a huge fan of the podcast. I've
Aw.
listened to every episode and
Aw.
shared it with so many friends, and it's such important work you're doing, spotlighting women in the space.
Thank
So
you.
thank you so much. In terms of how I got here and how this kind of started, my personal background and story uh, was one of the fact that I'm the daughter of immigrants played a huge role in my upbringing, my outlook, the way I saw the world, and basically my overall purpose and vision just for my life, not just for Enthea.
Yeah.
Growing up the way I did, I grew up in Canada, kind of upper middle class. I was very aware that I was different than others. I grew up in a very white suburb. and,
Yeah.
and I was conscious of the fact that I was very lucky
Mm.
to have these privileges. And so as a result, I made it my life's mission, I would say, at a very young age, that I wanted to spend my life serving and helping others. That
That's so beautiful. I mean, I just have to pause you for a minute and say that's not like the typical response of a kid who's like, "Oh, wow, I'm different and I'm so lucky. Let me use that to help others." But obviously you
yeah,
have a very good heart and you come from, good good intentions. So thank
I
you for making that decision early.
yeah, and I guess good values around me, good
Mm.
community. Um, and then, and perhaps probably to my parents' dismay a little bit, because they were hoping I'd be like an investment banker or doctor, something that made more money.
Yeah.
Um, and then also a huge experience for me was in my teenage years. I decided to lie to my parents. They still don't know about this, and they're
Ooh,
nearby.
I hope they don't listen to the
I
podcast.
know. And I decided to lie to them and sleep on the streets for a few nights. I wanted to
Interesting.
understand what it meant to be homeless. I took
Oh,
a school project way too far, actually. I was doing a school project on homelessness in Toronto. Um,
wow.
yeah, yeah, and spent 2 nights sleeping on the street, but very much with no money, had to beg to eat. And of course, I come from the privilege of knowing that I would have a roof over my head after a couple days. So by no means did I think this was the same as being homeless, but doing that, and in that experience, I think I interviewed maybe around 50 homeless people.
Wow.
And that really affected me in the sense that I realized almost everyone I had conversations with had a mental health issue.
Mm,
And we're so quick to judge what it means to be homeless, and we're not addressing what's the underlying causes here.
so true.
Um, so that really got me, very curious about mental health. I went on and did my undergrad in neuroscience and international development. And the goal was optimistic, idealistic me, like, let me combine these two passions of mine, how to help people in developing countries primarily, and how to address mental health. So that explained my academic background. And sorry, I know this is a very long-winded
It's
way of
okay.
asking a question.
I'm sure that everyone is enjoying getting to see a little view into your incredible heart and brain.
Uh,
Please keep
uh,
going.
and then I speed along. I did a master's in something and started my work at the UN. And the idea when I started my work at the UN was, how do we address mental health in developing countries? And I thought that with this thing called cash transfers, which you mentioned when you
Yeah,
read a little bit about my bio, which is the idea of giving money to the poor with no strings attached. So it's not a microloan or
right.
any microfinance thing. It's just giving money to the poor with no strings attached. The idea is they'll come out of poverty. My idea was that if you do this with a social worker or a counselor or a psychologist present at the pay point to do an intake on the households, you could understand the mental well-being of the household and then schedule follow-up so you could address this mental health component. I was unable to execute on that vision,
Hmm.
um, but was very fortunate to still be able to design and implement these cash transfer programs in all those countries for so
Yeah.
many years. Um, and then now getting to the real answer to your question with that as a background, I, I was still so much on my mind was, how do we address mental health? And I'm on the ground seeing how it's affecting people. I was working in, I mean, it affects people everywhere. Canada, US, doesn't matter if it's a developed or developing country, it affects people everywhere. But I was
Yeah.
on the ground seeing the aftermath of intergenerational poverty and trauma and war, and
Yeah.
really stumbled upon what was happening in the psychedelic space. And
Mm.
yeah, I was taken aback. I had not heard of any psychedelic study in my prior uh, school work or undergrad
Mhm.
degree. And
Big surprise it wasn't a hot topic at the
it
World
wasn't,
Bank
yeah,
or
big
the United
surprise.
Nations yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, and so I guess, like, for me it was, how do we make this more accessible? I cannot answer more questions about that,
Right.
but it really came from my personal experience was, how do we make this more accessible? There's obviously science and data and a bunch of anecdotal experiences and thousands of years of history of communities and populations saying that this has many benefits.
Yeah.
But now we live in a world where it's not accessible, it's not legal, and when it does become legal, it's going to cost thousands of dollars. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So you being you, we're like, okay, how do I fix it?
correct. Yes.
I'm starting to see the whole picture here, Sherry. Okay. You're a badass. All right. So then you and your co-founder came up with this idea for Enthea.
Yeah, so actually, it was initially four of us, four co-founders, with various different areas of experience that came together and came with this idea of Enthea. And it started as an idea and obviously then transitioned to an actual company. But the mission was always safe and affordable access to psychedelic healthcare. And how do we solve for this? And we had
Mm.
people on the team with tremendous insurance background, and then me, I'm the kind of person who wants to get things done and project manage and implement. And then someone else on the team that had a bunch of tech experience, because we thought we might need to build a platform for reimbursements and reporting,
Hmm.
stuff like this. So we came together and formed Enthea, and formed it as a nonprofit.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
And we were able as a company to get just over $1 million as a nonprofit in donations and loans, and use that money, which didn't come all at once. It was, pieces at a time, to grow our team, to build our credentialing process, to build our medical policy, standards of care, um, all of the back end infrastructure to create what's needed to provide this as a workplace benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And then in January of last year, so exactly a year ago, we launched our pilot with Dr. Bronner's, which you probably heard about.
Yes, but I want to
Yeah,
like know more details.
yeah.
But okay. Yeah.
But we
So you
launched,
launched.
and
Amazing.
thank you. And it was a tremendous work from the whole team. And then
Yes.
unfortunately, we completely ran out of money.
Yeah, it
Uh,
happens
it
sometimes.
happened. Yeah. And so that was difficult to go through, and we had to make some changes in the company and so on, and ultimately decided to restructure as a
Mhm.
public benefit corporation,
Yeah.
kind of like now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Smart move.
and yeah, yeah, I think so. And then with that restructuring, we were able to raise investor capital. We launched a seed round, have raised over $2 million so far. And now we are ready to go on full expansion mode. And that's what we're doing now.
Okay. Incredible. Wow, I've been following your journey since prior to your launch, and I'm really, really excited to see the trajectory. And I know it's about to go like this. So let's just get into the nitty-gritty a little bit about how does it
Yeah,
work. So we
yeah,
could use Dr. Bronner's as an example.
yeah,
So, at the moment, ketamine is the only legal psychedelic, right? So
correct.
Dr. Bronner's has decided that they would like to offer this treatment as an HR benefit for their employees.
Yes.
How do they work with Enthea to roll that out?
Right. So first they reach out to us or we reach out to them depending on how we approach the company. But generally speaking, until now we've been fortunate. We've had a lot of inbound interest. So first they reach out to us. They
Okay.
decide that they want to offer this as a workplace benefit
Yep.
to their employees. And then they have a few decisions to make.
Okay.
One decision is, and this is very similar to the decisions they have to make for the other benefits they offer their employees. Do they want to cover 100% or
Mm-hmm.
80% or 75%? Typically, anywhere from 75% to 100% is the norm.
Okay.
Uh, so that's one decision they have to make. And then the remaining percentage would be out of pocket for the employee.
Okay.
Do they want to cover spouses
Right.
and partners? That's similar to, again, other workplace benefits. So another decision they have to make. And then what are the, let's call it different diagnoses that ketamine
Mm.
therapy is uh, good for? What are the different diagnoses that they want to cover?
And
So
it becomes up to the employer to determine this because
it
it's
does
really
become,
their choice that they're going to cover this for their employees. So they get to determine if my employee is struggling with anxiety or depression, I'm going to cover it. But if they're just like if it's something else, then maybe they won't.
exactly that. And we
Okay.
present them with the evidence. So
Mm-hmm.
we've put together an expert panel of ketamine assisted therapists. We put together this expert panel. We've collected the data, we've done a full literature review, and we present the employer with different levels of evidence for different conditions,
Okay.
3 levels of evidence, and then basically let the employer decide, what do they want to cover. Now, I
Okay.
would say in the case of Dr. Bronner's, they decided to cover 100% of the benefit and all levels of evidence. If there was enough evidence
Amazing.
good for employees,
Yeah.
they wanted to do that. And that says a lot about their culture
Yeah.
and
Very
value.
smart company too, because if, obviously if your employees are feeling good and their brains are optimized, then you're
Yeah.
going to get a lot more productivity out of them and your company is probably going to increase its revenue. So it makes a lot of sense.
I'm so glad you actually said that because it really does make a lot of sense. And that's why our job knock on wood, has been a little easy in terms of attracting new customers because employers, at least the people in the HR and sometimes finance side of things or operation side of things in companies know and see the effect mental health is having on their team. So
Hmm. Yeah,
in
it's a
terms of
huge
loss,
problem.
yeah, like retention, loss of
Productivity.
productivity,
Yeah.
absenteeism. And
Hmm.
what we have to remember is it's not just if an employee is suffering from depression or anxiety, even if the, like, just, you and me, person to person, if my best friend or my partner or my mother or anyone in my
Mm,
family that's close to me is dealing with a mental health issue, it's still going to affect my productivity at work.
seriously. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah,
Okay. So then does that mean an employee of Dr. Bronner's then chooses a clinic that they go to and they submit it for reimbursement? Or are we also talking like some of the at-home ketamine treatment companies? I was a co-founder of Keta MD, which is an at-home
yeah,
ketamine treatment. There's a few of them out there. How does
yeah.
that part work?
Yeah, and we should probably talk more
Mhm.
about the
We should.
Keta part.
Yes.
But okay, so that's a terrific question, and it's a lot like to make it like an easy example, it's kind of a lot like when you have dental coverage through
Yeah.
your employer, right? When you want to go to the dentist, you probably can't just go to any dentist. You have
Yeah.
to go to one
There's a
in network.
network. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's a huge part of what Enthea offers. So we
Okay.
have a provider network that we're
Okay.
constantly building
Oh,
and
nice.
extending. Yeah. And being a part of Enthea's provider network means that the providers are credentialed. So they're vetted.
Mhm.
We're making sure that, you're not just going up to some random pop-up ketamine
Yeah.
clinic open 2 days ago and
Yeah.
got trained who knows where.
Yeah. That's
We've gone
good.
through a credentialing process with the provider to make sure that the patient is ultimately going to get not just affordable care because it's covered by the employer, but safe
Yeah.
access. It's a huge part of our mission. So going to a provider within network is what happens, like in the
Okay.
case of partner's employee. And another decision that the company employer has to make, same with just with the dental benefits and medical benefits, is
Hmm.
what do you want to do with out of network providers? Do you want to
Yeah. Yeah.
not? So if an employee says, well, I can't go to that one and I have this provider I've been using even before or whatever,
Right.
the employer decides, well, we'll cover 50% or we
Hmm.
won't cover it because there are enough providers in network. So it's
Hmm.
also a decision the employer gets to make with us.
Okay. And so then what about other psychedelics besides ketamine? Are you only focused on ketamine right now? I mean, what about in Oregon or Colorado or other states where other psychedelics are starting to become at least legal at a state level?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question. Well, we all working in this space have know, I think, and are excited about the potential of other psychedelic
Mm,
medicines becoming
yeah.
approved.
MDMA, of course,
Yeah,
through maps,
yeah,
it's an exciting time to
yeah.
watch all the developments.
It definitely is. So we have created our infrastructure and laid the foundation so that when MDMA assisted therapy becomes approved, hopefully soon, we'll be able to also offer that as a benefit to our customers and already have, before it becomes approved, already have built a provider network for it. And even the providers we are working with now, most of the time, not necessarily all of them, but a lot of them are providers that are interested in offering MDMA assisted therapy
Yeah,
once approved as well.
right.
So we are building out the infrastructure so that that's an easy add-on. Same with
Hmm.
psilocybin assisted therapy.
Okay,
Uh,
great.
and I also want to point out, because I'm an optimist and idealist, but also a realist. Sometimes, especially now being CEO, I have to be very realistic and
Yeah.
conservative. We've also considered from a business standpoint, could this business thrive without MDMA assisted therapy or without psilocybin assisted therapy, just with
Just
ketamine
with ketamine.
therapy?
There's so
And
much potential for ketamine. I mean, especially if people had it covered by their employer.
exactly. And when I say like, could the business thrive? One part of that means like financially, would we be able to
Yeah.
operate? But the other part is like, we have seen also the evidence that ketamine assisted therapy works. And so
Mm.
even
Yeah.
making sure that people don't have to pay out of pocket for that, I feel good about making that possible.
Okay. All right. Amazing. So let's say there's some people that are listening that operate a clinic or operate an at-home
Yeah.
ketamine, service like Keta MD, or are just an individual therapist that has added ketamine assisted therapy to their practice. How would they join the Enthea network?
Yeah. So go on our website, enthea.com, and there's a section right at the top that says for providers. And
Hmm.
as soon as you click that, it says letter of interest or a place to contact us.
Okay.
Um, Basically, straight from our website, go to the providers section, and you can fill out some basic information about yourself. And then we will get back in touch to start the credentialing process.
Okay. And I'm
Yeah.
guessing then it's kind of similar if you are an employer out there and you're like,
Yes.
wow, I
Yes.
really should be offering ketamine. I'm noticing that a lot of my employees through the pandemic or whatever, are dealing with mental health challenges. I know ketamine works and it's worth my investment in my employees to help their mental health. Similar sort of intake
Similar.
process through the Enthea.com.
Enthea.com, and there's a part right at the top that says for employers.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Incredible. I mean, I hope that we will see a day very soon when this just becomes the
The
norm.
norm. Yeah.
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 And so what do you think like for Blue Cross or
Yeah.
United Healthcare for some large insurance provider
Yeah.
to take this step? Like what would that take?
Yeah. You know what? I think ultimately they will have to take the step.
Yeah.
If we at Enthea are doing our job right, uh, which I think we are and will be continue to do, this we won't be able to, they won't be able to ignore us. And I'm being a little facetious about it being about Enthea. If psychedelic therapy advances the way we all are hoping it advances and more data comes out, United,
Mm-hmm.
Blue Cross Blue Shield, these larger insurers will not be able to ignore the potential of it. And there
Mm-hmm.
will be a demand that needs to be met. And so I do think eventually they will have to include this. And
Mm-hmm.
it then really becomes kind of like a build or buy decision. So by the time those
Okay.
companies take a lot longer to come around, they have that's how larger companies work, a lot more red tape. Things are a little bit slower.
Sure.
And when they come around, they might see Enthea and be like, wow, Enthea has a provider network with 2,000 providers nationwide. Maybe we should work with them.
Yeah.
It,
Okay.
or maybe they'll want to build their whole network on their own and build their own medical policy.
I mean, they're probably just going to want to buy you, but let's see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Or partner. It could be they
Yeah.
buy us. It could be they partner with us. Yeah.
Okay. Incredible. Well, you're a real trailblazer and, showing these larger insurance providers what's possible. And what I'm really excited to see is some of the data now that will come from, say, Dr. Bronner's after they've implemented this. Like, is there any plans for any data to come out about increased worker productivity or increased worker satisfaction or
Yeah.
retention or any of those kinds of data points?
Yeah, so Bronner's was our pilot and proof of concept, and there's some data we collected, like especially on utilization, and
Mm.
we are now onboarding 5 more customers actually at the moment.
Yay.
And as we onboard more customers, we're onboarding 100 this year. But even with these first 5, data collection is really important to us, showing on the HR side, if especially it's harder to show productivity, but it's easier to show retention, attrition, absenteeism, uh,
Hmm.
employee engagement, like if people are happier at work.
Yeah.
Companies take those surveys anyways, and then we
Yeah.
can see there's an improvement in that. So we are definitely excited to collect that data this year and then share it.
Oh, awesome. I can't wait to see it. I mean, I can already predict what it'll say, but
I mean,
I
I
can't
think we
wait to
know.
see it and
Yeah.
share it. And, that's what's really going to make a big difference too.
Yeah.
The data when we can show what we already know.
Yeah. And
So yeah, oh, please go ahead.
yeah, and I will say that because I also know that qualitative and anecdotal data is important. just from speaking to some Bronner's employees and hearing their stories, like I don't want to disregard, it's not all just about like a report that comes out with some numbers and
No,
charts.
I mean, these are people's lives that are being
Yeah.
saved and changed and profoundly impacted.
Yeah. I mean, people have told me that this saved their marriage. Other
Mm.
people have told me like, their spouse was able to try it. Other
Oh,
people have told me very, very directly that had this not been covered by Bronner's, they never would have tried it.
no, I
Um,
mean, it's really expensive to go to a ketamine clinic and even to do something like Keta MD, where we've tried to bring down the cost, but I mean, it's still, if you
yeah,
need a series, you need six treatments,
yeah.
like, and even if we offer financing, like it's still over $1,000 and
I'm
it's
glad.
no,
I'm
most
glad
people
you
can't afford
appreciate.
that.
Yeah,
So yeah, I mean, this is the only way. This is how healthcare works in this country. The only way really any of us can get treatments is if it's somehow covered by insurance.
yeah, yeah,
So thank goodness you're doing this. And for Bronner's, like I'm sure it's a huge HR point for them and your other now clients, to be able to offer this makes them a very juicy
yeah,
employer and they're
yeah.
recruiting like,
Yeah.
if I was looking for a job, I would want to work for somebody who offers that. So it's really, really incredible what you're doing. And I also want to just acknowledge you as a female CEO. You're really in the minority in this industry. There are not that many female CEOs. So how is that for you? Do you like run into any, I don't know, anything prickly being a female CEO? Any challenges?
Um, you know what? There are challenges, and there are also tremendous joys. Uh,
Hmm.
it's it really is like a joy. I might get a little emotional with you.
Please
Speaking
do.
on the challenge, yes, there are these typical stereotypes that take place. Raising money uh,
Mm.
can be, I feel, a little harder. It's harder to be taken seriously. You're usually walking into a room or into a Zoom with a bunch of testosterone.
Mhm.
And I've been advised to cut my hair shorter to be taken seriously or smile less. And I'm like, really?
Whoa.
um, so there's those things that
Yeah. Yeah.
happen.
Some old paradigm stuff that we're still needing to get rid of.
Yeah, but you know what? There's also this owning of feminine energy that,
Mm.
and then now I feel like this kinship, this sisterhood when I meet other female leaders.
Yeah.
There's this understanding. And then there's really, actually, Enthea got featured in Forbes
I saw
magazine.
that.
Yeah. And my cousin called me and, said to me, Sherry, you're the only person in our entire family that's been mentioned in Forbes. Like, even if you go back generations,
Aw.
and you're a woman. And I was, and like, it's interesting that we have to
Mm.
qualify like that, but it was also like, oh yeah, that's,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, there's both. There's good and bad.
It's pretty incredible, really, how you're moving things forward. And was just speaking as like for women in this industry and in this realm, like we're talking about healing. We're talking about taking care of people's health. Like this
Nurturing.
is the realm of the feminine.
Yeah,
Like if you are hurting, if you are struggling, like let me hold you and let me take care of you. That is
definitely.
evolutionarily like our role as women. So
No,
it kind of
definitely.
makes sense that it would be that, women really do need to be in
Yeah,
leadership roles in this new era of, not just selling products and not just looking at revenue and not just looking at, I mean, we talked about data and
yeah.
productivity and stuff, but really this is about healing.
Healing. It's
Yeah.
healing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm so grateful for what you're doing, Sherry. I'm so grateful that we got to have this conversation. Please tell people how they can follow you, and how can they support you.
Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful again, Kaya. Thank you for this. You can go on our website if you want more information, if you're a provider or a customer. Uh, you can, I think, only find me on LinkedIn. I don't do any social media.
Okay, LinkedIn, that's all right.
And I only got that recently. So, but more importantly, how people can help. Really, my call to action, if you will, would be to talk to others, ask your
Yeah.
friends, ask your family how they're doing, reduce the stigma. One, talking about mental health, two, talking about psychedelics. Like it's not even about Enthea. If people are just talking to each other and really connecting with each other and helping reduce the stigma,
Yeah.
that's my only ask.
It's so important. Well, thank you for asking that. It's going to take as many people as possible to continually do that. And I do encourage you all to follow this company. Really, I know there's going to be so many more exciting announcements and movement coming up from Enthea and from you, Sherry. So thank you again for your time. And thank you again for your work. Take care.
Thank you, Kaya.